Now I would like to invite to the stage Jānis Zemgus Jātnieks. He holds a bachelor's degree in archaeology, and he's representing Ethnographic Open-Air Museum of Latvia. And let's look at how the Open-Air Museum of Latvia is dealing with the ongoing challenge of caring for over a century traditional buildings affected by natural aging, past repairs, and shifting conservation values. The floor is yours, Jānis.
Thank you. So I'm from the Open Air Museum in Riga, Latvia. And yeah, as mentioned, I will be talking about the conservation of two of our buildings over the past year, and some of the challenges we've faced in doing that work, and some of the things we've noticed in doing this work, both in these two cases and in general over the past years. So both introducing the buildings and then looking at them being transported to the museum, the work being done over time at the museum, and then our current conservation work and what we face going forwards. So the museum itself, founded in 1924, so over 100 years ago, we have quite a large territory of 87 hectares with over 115 buildings, as well as rural exhibitions. And as I mentioned, transportation to the museum. So almost all of our buildings are original buildings, dismantled, transported to the museum, put back together. Here I have a graph which depicts the intensity, so the amount of buildings transported every year over the course of the museum's existence. So you can see the intense transportation in the beginning, and then sort of a swell and then fall over the latter half of the 20th century. And so why do I start with this specific aspect? It's because most of the buildings at our museum are primarily built of timber construction. So log buildings mostly, some timber frames, and Latvian rural architecture is primarily timber construction with quite minimal foundations traditionally, and thus there was never a need to focus on the masonry parts of the construction as such. Where possible, the minimal foundations would be marked and transported with the building, but in certain cases, and especially one of the more noticeable ones is the Pakalni Windmill. This has quite a monumental masonry construction. And so in the mid-70s, when this building was brought to the museum, the decision was made to reconstruct the masonry constructions, at the museum. And so by doing this, the original masonry construction was left documented and left in situ in the place where the windmill used to stand. The positive aspect of this is that even nowadays we can go back and still visit the original location of this building, be very sure of where it used to stand, and this also gives some context of the building has moved over to the museum now, but the place is still there, and we still have this context of the original building location. And this is true not only in the windmill's case, but also in various other buildings whose foundations are still visible nowadays, and you can sort of juxtapose what the area was like 100 years ago or so when the buildings were transported versus now, or less than 100. The downside of this practice is that we then rely on the quality of the construction, in this case the mid-70s, what materials they chose to use, and what focus was put on this masonry structure. So in this case, the general construction, masonry construction, was the same as the original building, but they did use perforated facade bricks as opposed to full bricks as were used in the original construction. There was also cement used in the pointing of the masonry construction, and this now we've been over time slowly restoring this masonry construction, exchanging the bricks for new full bricks, as would have been in the original construction, as well as repointing the masonry. And then the other building, as I mentioned, is the Ārluikas threshing house. So this is, as you can see, primarily a wooden construction building. Threshing houses, I think, are probably more well-known in Estonia as well, maybe less so in Lithuania. But so a threshing barn with a living function added onto it. So this building was brought to the museum in 1959 and erected. It does have quite a minimal foundation, and then the wooden construction. Upon arrival at the museum, the damaged timbers were replaced and the building was erected. But specifically in the 1950s and 60s, there was a sort of a novel practice at the museum with preserving this original substance of wood. And so here you can see some of the lingering effects of this conservation work of the 1950s and 60s, which was to drill holes in the original logs, fill them with various chemicals and substances to mitigate any rot damage or insect damage, and thus try to preserve these original pieces of wood. This does raise questions oftentimes of why we have methodical holes drilled into building logs, and is this original or not, and what the purpose of this is. But over time, these buildings keep living a life even at the museum. This building had suffered fire damage before it was brought to the museum, as well as in the 1980s at the museum. And a consequence of this is that some of these damaged timbers were replaced, others were not. And over time, due both to the fire damage over time, as well as increased roof loads and the large overhang of the roof, some of the rafters, as well as the top plate, the top timber of the building failed. And so currently then, last year we replaced both the damaged rafters and damaged top plate, and changed the roof material at the same time. And that's the finished construction of the threshing house. And so in this particular case, one of the challenges that we've noticed in multiple buildings at the museum is that these rural constructions are not meant for a thicker reed roof, which is the standard practice nowadays. And it also gives more longevity to the roof and the building. And thus we have to deal with this as a challenge, both increased roof loads and then the question of how we adapt the construction or do not adapt the construction, respecting the original and yet trying to still make it live on. And then sort of in conclusion, going forwards, we've noticed that these are lingering challenges at the museum. Both material is used over time, the practices that were viewed as best or novel or in some other way superior, at the time, and then the change in the work being done and the use of the buildings over time. And so I want to finish with this picture of the lightly fire-damaged roof of the Ārluikas threshing house, because I think these buildings live a life up until they are transported to the museum, but this life does not stop after they are transported to the museum, and I think that's an important thing to also communicate and keep talking about, and not say that they're sort of a static building over the past 100 or more or less years. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jānis. Very, very interesting and presentation. Do we have questions from the audience about building conservation? I have two questions. First of all, you showed us different conservation methods used over time. This is a fundamental dilemma, I find. How should we conserve earlier conservations? How would you personally feel about the idea that some 30 or 50 years from now, our or your current conservation practices will be re-evaluated and reassessed?
Yeah, this is a good question, thank you. I think obviously we all want to think that we're doing things the best way, we've got it all figured out. So in that sense, I hope that the work we do currently does stand the test of time and does prove to be the best, or in any case, sustainable and good. But I mean, I hope it does come under scrutiny after 30, 50 years. I think that shows that, you know, that we have progressed further from this point. Yeah.
I have another question. There is a question from the audience. Yeah.
Yes, hello. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. Because I am quite far away from building conservation, I may have some asking a bit of a stupid question, but I would like to know, how do you preserve or maintain the buildings that have had previous repairs done that don't really hold up nowadays or are like frowned upon today?
Well, thank you for the question. In the cases where we have an opinion, usually we have an opinion or it's evident as to what the shortfall is, right, for the previous conservation work. And so usually the imperfections of previous work show when there's a problem, right? No one looks at the perforated bricks until they start to fall apart, and then at that point it is evident that there's some problem, and then we try and fix it and find a better solution. I think, did I answer your question or not?
Yes, you did.
But I mean, usually it's you know, it's replacing previous materials that are maybe substandard in some way. Usually that's the. Yeah.
But what about like upholding or like just maintaining the daily taking care of the buildings? Does that differ when you perhaps notice something that could potentially become a problem regarding previous repairs?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, mostly that that is the challenge with the roofs, is with this, the structures not withholding strain over time. You know, these buildings are constantly being repaired and propped up, and then they get brought to the museum, and then it's like this thing we don't touch anymore. Yeah, so I think it's, yeah.
Thank you.
Constant journey.
You are very welcome to our open-air museum, so we can compare our conservation practices. Can you apply minimal conservation in building conservation?
Minimal conservation?
Yeah, like minimal treatment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always have to be a replacement of everything. Yeah. And so where possible, that is also done. Yeah. So we try to not replace things that don't need to be replaced. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's give an applause.